Iran claims a successful satellite launch set to improve Tehran's ballistic missiles is what's in the news right now. It's pretty unexpected at least, and people are reacting to that. We It's Iranian claim, so we have no idea. I believe we do not have official confirmation yet from not a terrorist regime or another Islamic regime or a dictatorial regime, whatever you want to call it. So we are holding our judgment on that. But I think there's still a lot to talk about when it comes to specifically the reactions from the people about this, from the Western leaders, Western politicians, as well as something we've been talking about this whole time. Basically, this launch, if true, brings Iran closer to basically being a nuclear threat. You know, this this could this brings them closer to be able to, for example, launch intercontinental ballistic missiles with maybe some nuclear payload, maybe some nuclear warhead. Basically, some type of nuclear weapon is closer when it comes to being used, as well as there are some reports about Iranian enrichment program continuing to get basically purer uranium, and at some point it becomes weapon grade, or that's very simple explanation and also very simple understanding from me. But I think that's the basic idea is that. So welcome to the Daily Objective. Joining me today is James Valliant. James, how are you doing? How are you feeling about this? Uh, what happened if really true?
If really true. See, I would, they are savages, and they're not interested in tech. They don't have a very high tech industrial civilization, nor is Iran concerned about, being on the cutting edge of science and technology. So I'd treat with a bit of skepticism such reports of Iran, doing fantastic technological things. I think the Israelis have shown what a paper tiger their air defenses were and so forth. But I don't have any question in my mind that they're enriching uranium. It is likely that they've got to a point of about 60% purity, which is getting close to dirty bomb stuff, but they'll need much higher, 85, 90% to get to the kind that are considered weapons grade uranium. But they're doing it more and more because these centrifuges that help in the purification process, they're getting bigger ones called cascades, in which they can produce greater amounts of refined uranium for this purpose. This report, still more disturbingly, indicates that they're getting heavier and heavier payloads, claiming to be able to get heavier payloads into outer space, into outer space. Now that's that's the development of an intercontinental ballistic missile system, and that is it could potentially threaten every country on this planet because you can get nuclear weapons into space. Now, again, their ability to do that, their ability to be accurate with their firing on that and stuff, is still an open question. Nonetheless, this country exists for one purpose: to destroy civilization, to put it most broadly. And therefore, their great Satan is the United States, the little Satan is Israel. They have just this year launched two huge ballistic missile strikes directly against Israel, which fortunately has a defensive system that could prevent nearly all of that from coming in and harming anyone. However, it did leave craters on the ground in Israel. Now, Israel may have known which ones were, because they can't prioritize all the missiles coming in, which ones were going to land in safer spots and which ones were going to land in other safer spots. But it shows that they have to kind of make choices. So, but even a choice like that, let's say it lands in an unpopulated spot and it's a nuclear missile, that could cause devastation in a small country like Israel. If they have ICBMs, that could threaten every nation on this planet. Every nation on this planet. It is a theocratic dictatorship, as everyone knows. they're not concerned about the well-being, the material prosperity of their people. They're not going to go for a free market, international trade in such a way that they develop a robust middle class with a prosperous a way of living. That's not what Iran is about. Iran is about establishing an Islamic rule on this planet, step by step. It may take them a long time, but that is their long-term goal. They do not respect freedom. Women who object to women who don't wear the hijab in the proper way, if they show a little hair, they disappear and die in Iranian prisons. And if hundreds of women and girls take to the streets in protest of that, they are killed or disappear in Iranian prisons. Being homosexual in Iran is no fun. Being Jewish in Iran, it can be no fun. No, these people are, it's a theocratic religion, and I mean very primitive religion-based government. They are a dictatorship, and they are an aggressive dictatorship. They have engaged in active war against civilization after active war against civilization through their proxies, for example, the Houthis. They have stopped international trade. Since the early 1980s, through their proxies, they've been attacking and killing American soldiers, attacking American military bases there. And they've, of course, been funding Hezbollah, Hamas, all of their attacks, all of Hamas's atrocities, and a whole bunch of terrorism in addition to these ballistic missile attacks on Israel. So there's no question that they're all about aggression. They're all about destroying Israel. In fact, back up. They're all about destroying civilization and spreading Islamic theocratic dictatorship as far as they can, as fast as they can. Now, they know they can't do it all at once, but allowing such a country to get a nuclear weapon would be the stupidest thing any civilized, sane country in this world could hope for. It threatens the interest of every country on this planet. If what Iran is saying is true, then they are getting closer and closer to an intolerable situation that would ensconce their government by the reckoning of many policymakers in the West. Once you get nuclear weapons, well, we really can't, we got to, that's it. Your regime is there forever. We can't really ever help take you down from inside or outside because, after all, you've got nuclear weapons. That's blackmail. Well, backing up the United Nations itself is a kind of blackmail, a protection racket for dictators and terrorists. And having these nuclear weapons would be diplomatic blackmail that would keep this regime in power to the detriment of their own people, not only to the direct threat to every other country on this planet. So it seems to me it is impossible to allow to happen. Any benevolent, life-loving country or person on this planet today must insist that their government take whatever steps, and I mean military steps, that are required to utterly destroy the ballistic missile program, the nuclear enrichment program, and indeed the leadership in Tehran. They have become a direct threat. As an aggressive theocratic dictatorship, they have become a direct threat to every country on this planet. And if this report is at all true, then it is a moral imperative on the part of every government on the globe that could do something about it to end the problem, to take out their nuclear enrichment program, to take out their ballistic missile program. And indeed, the only real solution is to take out the mullahs and the Ayatollah and their leadership in Tehran. That's the only moral thing that one can do in the face of even this theoretical threat.
So we have a few comments in chat. First, someone says, with their ties to Russia and China, it's kind of surprising they don't already have something. So something to remember about dictatorships, they usually don't like to get along too much. Is because they are fundamentally cannibalistic. I mean, they are fundamentally unable to sustain themselves, and they can only sustain themselves by to the amount they exploit productiveness. This might mean exploiting the productiveness of the few, people, few people who are still able to use reason in those dictatorship, or they are exploiting either in like in case of Hamas, some international organizations like UNRWA, basically using us to support themselves, or they are exploiting other nations directly. So So yeah,
Yeah.
just because Iran is friends with China or Russia doesn't mean, hey, here you go, get some nukes. It's
Well, they
usually
will cooperate enough to attack their enemy, civilization, and any kind of liberal country in this world that is civilized and respects individual rights to any degree. And so you'll have no, excuse me, North Koreans fighting with Russia against Ukraine, or you'll have Iranian drones being supplied to Russia. So they will cooperate to some extent. China is the people who the country that buys Iranian oil, whatever the international sanctions are. And of course, this entire nuclear program is in violation of international law for whatever it means. If the UN or international law actually meant something, they would cool it on Israel and go after Iran, who's been systematically violating the whatever international nuclear arms limitations that are in place. In any case, but you're right. Once they're done with civilization, they'll be at each other's throats. Dictatorships can't inherently get along, and they're inherently distrustful of one another, just as criminal gangs are inherently distrustful of one another, and people within the criminal gang are inherently distrustful of one another. That's the nature of being thugs and dishonest brutes. You can't trust your own colleagues, much less your temporary allies. No, they'd be at each other's throat in a heartbeat if they, once the real enemy to them, civilization, liberal Western rights respecting nations, once that is taken care of, they'd be at each other's throats in a heartbeat.
Yeah, and some people are saying in the chat, Israel knows they are not nuclear, else we wouldn't be having this conversation. And I think some people are also analyzing what's happening. The claim isn't that Iran has nuclear weapons or that Iran is like on the
Oh,
brink of basically like tomorrow they're gonna have nuclear
no, I
weapons.
don't. I
This
don't
is
know that.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, but not even reports are claiming that. Just so we are all on the same page
from
in the
the
chat.
from the
But
best international information we have, they're about up to 60% purity, which is not the 90% standard that most governments use for weapons grade uranium, but they're on their way. And they do have centrifuges that improve them, and that's the news. They have these new powerful centrifuges which can purify them more and at a faster rate, these cascades. So they're not there yet. And this report, I would put a little asterisk next to anyway. This is just a report we have of a payload that they've been able to put into space that no one has yet confirmed. But what we're talking about, but they obviously do have a ballistic missile program. They've engaged in 2 ballistic missile attacks on Israel just this year. So it's a question of how advanced they
yeah.
could get soon.
Yeah,
That's the
so
issue.
even that program is not surprising. And even technically even the launch, if it was the surprising part would be if the launch was successful, because this that
Right.
attempt about this launch has happened several times. It just
Yes.
failed every time, since you're a dictatorial nation that pretty much
And a
cannot.
pretty primitive, savage nation that doesn't put a great stock in science and technology in the first place. These people are medieval savages.
Yeah, and just to, because someone said, if Iran was close to developing nuclear weapons, the West would do something about it. And I just remind people of North Korea that we had this exact scenario. We had North Korea developing nuclear weapons. We knew they are developing nuclear weapons. We tried to negotiate with them, and they did develop it, and now they have it. And now I believe they are able to. I don't think they are at the intercontinental ballistic stage, but they are able to threaten at least the west coast of America, as well as, of course, South Korea and Japan, which and Taiwan, which are American allies.
India and Pakistan have both have nuclear programs, and there's nothing the world has been able to do to stop that. So I
Yeah.
don't
Well.
know. I think that's a pipe dream. No, most nations of the world are not rational. Many authoritarian, many theocratic, many in sympathy with Palestinians. So no, I don't think most nations of the world would do a damn thing to prevent Iran from getting a nuclear weapon.
I mean, we know the uh, Well, I don't know, because it sometimes it really depends. Because even you have to realize, even someone like China doesn't necessarily want to go out and depending like you know end up in a nuclear holocaust. And to what extent do you believe that Iran? I'll just, since we have time, I'll bring up this. James, there is this game called Hearts of Iron. And there is this alternative, basically it's like a World War II simulator, and there's like alternative scenario, basically what if Hitler won the Second World War. And one nation that comes up after this new order is a nation in Burgundy, or the newly nation named Burgundy, completely under the control of Heinrich Himmler. And what he does, he sets up what's called the Burgundian system. He basically says the world is so corrupt by the Jews that the only way out is a nuclear holocaust. We all hide in a bunkers, we wipe out the earth, and then we can come out as like a pure Aryan race. And to what extent do you believe that Iran basically sort of views it in a similar way? Like, we just, even at our cost, even at our expense, we just need to annihilate the Jewish influence, which pretty much would mean you have to clear out the whole world. Or basically that would mostly be the consequence. It's not like you just drop nukes on Israel and America and nothing else happens. After you do that, it's pretty much done. That it's gonna go. It's definitely gonna go sideways. And so basically the point I was making, like, the question is, even nations such as China and Russia, if they believe Iran would be basically a suicidal regime, would even they be sort of content, or sort of willing to cooperate with Iran? We know they are right now, since maybe they are also betting that the US or the Western states will do something about Iran, so they don't have to deal with. But at the end of the day, you have to realize that yeah, dictatorial regimes are fundamentally suicidal. They are in a state of committing suicide by the nature of what they are. So the only question is, do they realize it? And you know, is it something that they'll be like, well, because the only alternative to that is actually accepting Western values. So
Right. And I wouldn't hold my breath for that. No, as Ayn Rand wrote, and I know I keep citing this article by Ayn Rand, she wrote a brilliant article called The Roots of War, and you can find it in her book, Capitalism, the Unknown Ideal. And she observes there that dictatorship is the cause of war in the modern world. She points out that dictatorship is a state of war of a government against its own people. And so, yeah, they are inherently parasitical. They are inherent. There's something root nihilistic about dictatorship. In the case of Islamic dictatorships, it's particularly dangerous. After all, it is contemporary Islamism that is characterized by things like suicide bombers. 9/11, for example, that killed thousands of people in my country more than 20 years ago, took down two massive skyscrapers, attacked the Pentagon, hijacked airplanes. The people all committed suicide who took over each of those planes. They are perfectly willing to commit suicide. Just take a look at some of the UNRWA education that they give to Palestinian kids. It is a glorious thing to be a martyr in the cause, to kill yourself in the cause of killing Jews, destroying Israel, etc. That's how these kids are taught through UNRWA schools, by the way. But no, that's the culture. It's just a reflection of Palestinian culture, which gives you some idea of the direction Islam is in. And it doesn't matter whether it's Shia or Sunni. It doesn't. You understand this Wahhabism came out of Saudi Arabia that caused the suicide bombing on 9/11. But Iran today, of course, what they're doing would be thought of and is obvious, would be suicidal if the West ever did stand up to their brutal aggression and their theocratic monstrosities and atrocities. No, these people are suicidal. That's the absolute danger. They're theocratic. They actually sincerely believe that they'll be going to 72 virgins. And that's what makes them more dangerous than atheistic communists ever were. Like China and Russia have large nuclear programs. And, but even to a certain extent, the governments of India and Pakistan are secular compared to other governments in that region. Iran is not. And should one of these Islamic suicidally motivated governments or groups get their hands on nuke, they won't hesitate to use it, my friends. It is a catastrophic danger should Iran actually develop and have nuclear weapons, much less nuclear weapons attached to ICBMs, which could reach who knows where on this planet.
Yeah, and so well, first I mentioned about the suicidal thing. So I'm really getting a lot of value from just realizing that game exists. James, I told you about the game for Fursan Al-Aqsa, the Knights of Al-Aqsa, where you can recreate October 7th as a Hamas fighter against the Zionists. And
What a
something,
sick exercise. What a sick exercise that game is. Excuse me. I mean, I know that it can be fun to work out war game scenarios and stuff, but right now, maybe it's too soon. You know, it's not like it's 1066 in the Norman Conquest. I'm not willing to play a mental game
yeah,
about people,
and
about women and children being raped and burnt and taken hostage. No, it's too soon for me. Sorry. It sounds like a pretty sick game.
yeah, just heads up, I didn't play it. I just know
Okay,
it
I'm not
exists.
blaming you,
Uh,
Daniel. You didn't
but
do the
but
game. You didn't make the game.
but I've seen some videos from it, and what was really surprising to see is the death screen when you die. You know, usually in games, first-person shooters, when you die, it's like game over, try again. You failed, try
Try
again.
again.
And what does it say there? You became a martyr. Now you can rejoice with the. It has like I think it has like a poem at the end. But basically, you fail, but you haven't failed. You actually succeeded. You become martyr. That's a success. It has like a picture of like a young female hand reaching up for like the hand of the terrorist. And so it like really has this really idolization of that, which is what Islamic culture
It is a
has.
death cult. It is a
Is
death
that?
cult. They worship death. Death is part of their chants. Death to America. Death to Israel. Death to the great Satan. Death to the Zionist, entity, as they call it. No, that's what they're all about. Death, 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 death. And instead of investing their money in improving the lot of the Iranian people, they spend their money funding Hezbollah, the Houthis, and Hamas.
Yeah, and something to realize about, if Iran gets the nuclear weapons and they are really a suicidal regime, or they will view it as basically, this is the way to go out. This is the way for all of us to go out. And unless there is someone to stop them, unless we know there are some people willing to rise up in Iran, they are simply do not have the moral the moral support from the West at all, or the material support, or in the sense of calling out Iran for what it is. And so once they do develop it, it has to be realized that even if they don't actually use them in a suicidal way, you have to realize the threat it really is. North Korea is actively like dropping bombs in Japanese seawaters or in South Korean seawaters just to see what they can get away with it. The same thing with China. They are increasingly more and more invading Taiwanese, basically like sea, like territorial waters, just to see what's gonna happen. And similar with Iran, they've already tried launching missiles on Israel. It was part. It was maybe lucky for them they didn't really hit anyone. But let's say they did hit someone. Well, we've already had October 7th when more than 1,000 Jews died, and uh, people are still against Israel. So what if there was a bomb that dropped on Israel and 1,000 people died? Well, we cannot support Israeli genocide against Iranians. Well, what if 10,000 people died? What if a nuke was dropped and 100,000 people died? Would that be enough?
Oh,
Like,
we'd be told that the nuclear attack on Jerusalem and Tel Aviv didn't happen in a vacuum, is what we'd be told. And we'd be told any response by America would be, of course, escalation. Yeah. And of course, any response by America in that regard would, of course, be genocide and proof that America is an apartheid system, and how much superior, of course, or how tolerant we have to be of these lunatics in Iran. Yeah.
Yeah, and if people say, I'm exaggerating, if there was a nuke dropped, we would really think hard about it. But just look at how many Ukrainians died during the war. Just because it happened like spread over 2 years, it doesn't mean that is that a big deal? Just because it happens at once, it's somehow different. I mean, I think you would have the same people if even if Russia, we don't even go to Iran, even if Russia dropped the nuke on Kiev or on maybe not the capital, but some smaller city, what would we hear from the West? Well, we cannot escalate. We cannot escalate it into a nuclear war. I mean, like, come on, you have to recognize for what it is. You cannot bend the knee to what the dictators are doing. You cannot bend the knee when your enemies like are actively trying to destroy you. They will do anything they can to get away with the more damage they can do, and trying to act as, if only we appease them, if only we sign a deal for them, I can go back to London and wave the paper saying I signed a deal with Hitler. It's gonna be
Right.
okay. There is no way to get around with it. The more you the more you pull back, the more you stop actively confronting the evil, the more they will get away, and the more damage will be done later.
That's exactly correct. And we cannot tolerate nuclear blackmail. As I say, that permanently ensconces dictatorships and a threat against civilization in forever and ever. You really got to hate the West and hate civilization hard. I'm talking to intellectuals and media people in the West. They've got to hate their own civilization pretty hard to want a permanent nuclear blackmail situation, whether from Russia or from Iran. And that is precisely why, in my view, America should never take the use of nuclear weapons potentially off of the list. We have to be able to say, we will use nuclear weapons, full stop.
Yeah, I mean, the idea of a nuclear threat shouldn't go one way. It shouldn't be that just,
Yeah,
well, we are afraid to attack Russia because they might nuke. Well, why is Russia not afraid to attack Ukraine for the case
right.
of the West using it? Why is Russia
United
not
States,
afraid?
Britain, and France have nukes too. It is insane. It is absolutely insane. And we capitulate to their continued tyranny in their own countries, their aggressions into other countries, precisely because of this kind of nuclear blackmail. It is unspeakable and it has to be reversed.
We have a new member, Dan Lips. Thank you so much for becoming a member. We have a super chat from PC. Thank you so much. He says Iran is a criminal government on its way out. Well, as much as I would like to believe it, we don't see it. Although when regimes like that fall, it usually doesn't happen over a long period. It happens. Wait, what is it like? It happens suddenly and then all at once, or something like that, or surprisingly all at once, or something like that.
I remember the fall of the Soviet Union. Now, things haven't gotten terribly better, but at least their empire fell apart. But I remember how quickly it happened and how their nuclear weapons program didn't turn out to be this horrible, can't take it monster. No, ladies and gentlemen, we can't be paralyzed because the bad guys have nukes. No, we cannot. That only gives into them and will keep their dictatorship alive and well and breathing.
Yeah, and similarly, in my country, or in my former country, I guess Czechoslovakia, it was 7 months from the start of the Prague Spring to the dissolution of the communist regime specifically. I mean, that's what happens with tyrannical regimes. They do oftentimes fall apart very suddenly. So we might see it even surprisingly. But let's hope.
I hope.
And we shouldn't rely on it, you know, collapsing on its own when they are
No,
posing an active threat. We
no,
could
they're an oppressive dictatorship. We should assist the people of Iran in getting rid of their tyrannical government. Absolutely.
Yeah, we could afford it with someone like Soviet Union, since there was no actor, at least let's say decades after the Second World War, there was no active threat, and we knew they would fall apart. At least it should be clear. But um, yeah, that there is
Well, they
no
were brought to
such.
the point of falling apart by intense pressure placed on them from multiple sources, and an awareness that they didn't have that moral high ground that they once did with Western intelligentsia. Having lost that, and being proven to be a basket case in many ways. And finally, people standing up to them in a moral way caused them to collapse. It's astonishing the strength of moral backbone, ladies and gentlemen. A little moral backbone, and these Islamist savages will be a whole lot easier to take care of than either the Nazis or the communists in Russia. I promise you.
We also have a super chat from Paul. Thank you so much. He says, "Love the thumbnail." Thank you so much. We have
What's
a
great
super
about
we have a super chat from Bonnie. Thank you so much, and a super chat from Shosbot. Thank you so much. He says, "Have either of you seen I don't know how to pronounce it. Sarah Baron Cohen film The Dictator. I've seen it not that long ago, maybe like a month ago.
yeah, Sacha Baron Cohen.
Oh, Sasha.
Yeah, that comedian plays pranks. No, I've not.
Oh, really? It's a fun movie. It's a good movie. Although it's it's a classic sort of like anti. At the end he has a speech like, "Oh, why don't you like a dictatorship? You can pay some people you want to like get them into government. You can give preferential deals to your people," like saying like America is based. You can like censor media, like basically implying America is already a dictatorship. But good jokes for the most part. Uh, all right, James, thank you for joining me today. We'll continue on the reality show. We'll continue talking about Amnesty International because I think there's just the recent report has been really, I think, disgusting, and there's so much yet to talk about. Just quickly, we also have a super chat from PC. Thank you so much. PC says UN never passes resolutions on Iran. I would assume there is at least one, especially maybe even possibly condemning at some point. But yeah, I wouldn't hold my breath too long for that. But let's see you back on the reality show. We'll be talking about amnesty for the terrorists international. So make sure to join us for that. Thank you, James. Thank you, everybody, and bye bye.
Be safe.